Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, this afternoon. I'm very happy to be with Christine today into our webinar about AI strategy and compliance in practice, turning an AI vision into results. This is a collaboration between Visium and Safe AI Now. And before we jump into it and giving you all the tips and tricks to build a robust and compliant AI strategy, we'll just like to take 2 minutes to introduce Visium and Safe AI Now. About Visium, we are a Swiss-based consultancy that was born out of EPFL in Lausanne. We were created in 2018 when we started with a very crazy project in the field of Gen AI, and since then grew to 60 different Visiumies throughout Europe. And yes, you heard me very well, throughout Europe, because we launched an office in Bosnia and an engineering center in Valencia. To date, we have worked with over 50 enterprise clients, did more than 250 engagements in artificial intelligence and data, and have even been a recognized leader by the Financial Times in 2023 by being the second fastest growing Swiss organization. I'm Vegezzi. I'm a partner at Visium, and my role basically stands in helping organizations embrace, implement, and finally, the most difficult, adopt AI.
Hello everyone, my name is Christine Laut. I am the founder of Safe AI Now. I have 20 years experience in consulting in companies like KPMG, Atos, Capgemini, and my expertise lies in translating and making the bridge between technology and regulations. So 2 years ago, I decided to found Safe AI Now to set up responsible AI governance and ensure that we can develop, deploy, and manage AI with confidence. So I'm working with partners and with Visium, and I'm part also of a large ecosystem with Swiss ecosystem associations, and also in France with Upfront CIA, where I'm leading a team related to EU Act, and particularly the conformity assessment. And Safe AI Now was listed also as one of the promising startups on AI in 2024. In terms of services, we are providing services related to training and workshops, upskilling on AI, services related to risk and compliance with gap analysis on the EU Act, and then implementation of AI strategy and implementation of AI governance. All that in line with international standards, such as ISO and the EU Act.
Fantastic. So Christine and I today decided to join forces to present to you a joint approach on how to tackle AI strategy together with Visium and Safe AI Now. And what we will do is we will guide you a little bit through our framework and then jump directly into case studies on how each one of us have in different ways implemented AI strategies, understanding a bit more the key decision challenges, and really try to focus on giving you an aspect on what's happening on the field that we are observing to just kind of mix the theory to the practice. And so our approach stands in 4 different blocks. The first one is about creating robust AI visions for organizations. And so whenever we talk about an AI vision, what do we talk about? We talk about a direction that will basically allow us to prioritize AI investments in projects in a bit of a smarter manner. And by smarter, what do we mean? We mean that we will be aligned with the overall company vision, its goals, and its strategy. And that's really the first step of the pyramid, and that's where we always start from. Then we have the where to play area, which is basically focusing on the key areas where AI delivers value and a strong return on investment while being ethical and compliant. It's really about pinpointing the different focus areas that you want to focus on your business and make sure that based on the framework that you will adopt, you will be compliant and you will be ethical, even more so with the upcoming legislations coming in that are being enforced next year. And then we have the biggest chunk, I would say, which is the AI use case part, which is all about making sure to identify the right use cases for the pain points that you have in your organizations. And finally, when you have those use cases, you got to make sure that you can win on deploying them. So it's all about data management, making sure that you have the robust management systems for value creation, and finally having clear operational roadmaps. And usually we always start at the top and we go to the bottom. And as you can see, we start from more of a corporate perspective with the vision, the where to play. Then we go into the use cases, and then we have to treat each use case one by one to make sure that we have the necessary ingredients to make it work.
So at SciFi now and Visium, we believe that strategic approach is key to unlock the full potential of AI. So this slide outlines how we guide your organization to implement AI responsibly and effectively. So as presented just before, I will just deep dive a little bit on the details of each strategic area and the key decision challenges that you have. The first is defining the vision. It means that we need to ensure that the AI initiative is properly aligned with the company overall goals, but also the ethical and culture of the company, and ensure that we have a proper alignment of all AI initiatives according to that. The next step is related to,
apologies for that. My fingers slipped.
Is where to play. So here we need to identify the key areas where AI makes sense in your business, ensuring that we have business value, and it's key to ensure that it's not AI or for technology enhancement, but it's to identify business value. And then ensuring also that if we have business value, we take it also into consideration any ethical or compliance regulatory requirements that can come in. The third one is related on crafting AI use cases and ensuring that we have a meaningful use case available for AI, and prioritizing also the list of use cases that we might have identified, which makes sense, but we need a kind of matrix of prioritization between impact and feasibility and cost. And last but not least is how to win. It includes, in fact, robust operational roadmaps. But before that, we need to evaluate the data readiness, ensure also a clear decision on what we do in terms of AI infrastructure. Do we make it? Do we buy it? Developing also a robust target operating model, who is doing what, who is responsible of what, and having also an appropriate risk and governance framework, depending on the risk that we have identified in the previous phase. So this holistic approach helps basically your organization to achieve tangible results while maintaining compliance and ethical regulatory integrity.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christine. And now we move on to the different case studies that we wanted to present to you that followed this kind of framework that you have just seen. And the idea here is we have 4 different case studies where we will deep dive, and then we will open it up for questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to just share them in the chat with us. And we will start with this case study of privately held chemical-based company in Switzerland. That is quite of a large organization. We can say it's over $1 billion in Swiss franc revenues. And this client was kind of struggling to define their corporate and AI data strategy. So that's really where they were. So they had a tough time in identifying really where they wanted to go, what was their vision, because they always felt that they would not be able to compete against tech organizations. And they always felt whatever we want to do, it's going to be very difficult to be a leader, an innovator, and maybe we might be better off by being a follower. And so the key decision challenges when they came to us and they were talking to us about all that is that, I mean, the first one is you had a lot of expectations. You have to think that this was post ChatGPT bubble. And so everybody wanted to do AI, whatever AI was meant, from management, leadership, to the different employees. And they had this willingness to do it. But so with these expectations, there was the reality of things, which is we don't have resources. And resources are maybe, where in this case, didn't have the budget to do it, we didn't have the skills, and we didn't have the talent, nor they did have a very clear infrastructure to support that. And so that was the first, let's say, big key decision challenges. How do we move forward with an AI strategy when we don't really know what we want to do and we don't have the resources to do it? And so at some point, the second key decision challenge came is that there was this decision that was, okay, because we have limited resources, we're going to rely on hyperscalers and we're going to focus on a certain amount of our vendors to innovate for us, and then we will implement their own tools. So you can think of the typical, right? The Google, the Microsoft, the SAP, and so forth and so on. And so the solution that we did is based on their need, we created a clear AI vision that was about leveraging being a follower and leveraging what these tech companies were doing. So their vendors, their partner, right? So really have a partner approach and really move gradually with the different use cases. So we would only really buy use cases that were available in the market, and that meant that the pyramid was very different. It is like all of the use cases that we looked like were more focused on what was already existing in the market. So you can think of, for example, ChatGPT, obviously implementing your own solution or directly working with OpenAI. You can think of a Microsoft Copilot and so forth and so on. And so it changed everything in the pyramid, let's say, to have that. And so the budget, instead of being about making AI and so building the very complex algorithms, so forth and so on, was much more focused on the solution from a side of educating others. And so leveraging already made tools and then educating others to work very well with them. So for example, you can think of prompt engineering for ChatGPT and so forth and so on. And that was the solution we came up with.
I have a question on this use case. Can you just explain why they were thinking to leverage external, I would say, resource, and why not willing to invest into building their own resource for the long term?
That's a great point, and it's also one of the first question that we asked, because we said, AI will last. We don't know for how long, but it is here to stay, right? And we're entering a paradigm shift that is stronger than internet. So why don't you want to start already within your AI strategy? Think of investing into more capabilities. And the reason was that they had this strong belief that with the limited investments they were capable of putting into technology and how fast technology was evolving. So this was really in the time, just to put some more context, where every single week we had a new LLM coming out. So one week OpenAI was launching a new ChatGPT, and then Mistral was doing one, and then Gemini was doing one. And so they really had this feeling that innovation was going to continue and was going to be much stronger from a partnering side rather than a doing side. And then they also had, from a business perspective, so you remember, right, the AI vision is always linked towards your business goals and your business vision, that there was other elements from a technological perspective that were more interesting for them to invest into rather than AI at this stage for their products. So they believe that their product innovation wasn't relying so much on AI, but could rely on different technologies, and that's where they wanted to put their investments, at least for the next 3 years. So what I really think is that for them, they looked at a period of 3 years, more or less. They tried to mitigate the expectations from everybody across the organization by responding to them. And I'm pretty sure that they will reevaluate through time that decision and potentially rework their AI strategy soon, right? Because it's a living organism kind. You have to be adaptable, you have to be flexible, and you have to be able to move on whatever the market is showing.
Okay, now I will take my hat of risk manager and I will ask you, is there any risk of focusing on relying on hyperscalers?
So, to your disappointment, I will remove your hat of a compliance manager, and I will go more on a business risk, obviously, because you also have a very strong lock-in effect with them. So for example, if you use the Microsoft ecosystem, you're going to have a tendency to use certain tools, for example, a Copilot and so forth and so on. And so not only will your costs rise significantly because you're going to pile up on licenses and so on and so on, but you're also going to be much more locked in with that vendor. And maybe you will have a tough time in trying to find other tools that might come. And what we're seeing right now, so fast forward a couple of years to 2 years, sorry, one and a half year, what we see that is quite interesting now is that for many applications where we thought Copilot maybe was the best option back in the days, right? Because it made a huge boom in the market, if you remember, there is dozens of new tools that are actually extremely interesting. And so this lock-in with these big organizations, of course, is the safest, most likely. Also, from a compliance perspective, they will be much more detailed. They will be able to give you all the necessary justification and confidence that you need. But you do have a little bit of a stop on innovation on that one. And I'll give you an example, very simple. We are a consultant. We do a lot of slides. There are today dozens of tools that can generate slides for you, right? But you have also Copilot. And it appears when we test those tools, you have things that are extremely different in results. And that's where you have to be able to choose on which one you want. And so that's where you also you're limited in that part of innovation. But obviously, from a compliance perspective, those kind of tools will give you much more security, I would say.
Okay. And do you believe that for this company specifically, this strategy will bring value for the long term?
What I like about this case that we're talking about is that it's from a short-term perspective, it focuses a lot on adoption. It focuses on people touching pragmatic AI tools, At Visium, for example, we have built numerous algorithms for organizations, but it's always with small user base, right? If we would innovate in R&D, we would innovate specifically in a team within R&D, and so we would have a restricted amount of users. And with this implementation that they are doing, while maybe they're not the most innovative, they are actually democratizing AI to the mass of the organization, and that has some certain type of power. So I would say that yes, it does have, it will bring value, but it will have a expiring date, and that's where you cannot miss the train to actually do something more out of it. And so if you look at it short term, yes, you will have great adoption and you will have kind of your AI maturity rise, but you might miss a lot of opportunities because you're not willing to invest a bit more and be a little bit of a laggard if we look fast forward in 2 years if you don't change. So let's see. Let's see if they evolve a little bit. But enough about this case. Let's move to yours, Christine. Tell us a bit more.
Yes, it's a different case. Also a Swiss-based case for an international wealth management company. And it's a different approach. They have developed, in terms of context, several AI solutions, and they want to ensure that they have foundations for responsible and compliant AI. So the challenge for them was to preserve the reputation and the values of the company, close potential gaps that we might have identified in terms of compliance or standards, and also facilitate decision-making on AI in a vast, large organization. So in terms of solution here, we are in financial services, we are in a regulated environment already, and you have also a lot of standards popping up in every region today. So the challenge was also to evaluate how we can be and set up a responsible framework that can be agile for future. So we have to assess the international standards and try to find some kind of common denominator. Based on that, we have defined a vision. So we are on the first step of the pyramid, where we define some ethical principles and responsible principles that were supporting basically the AI strategy. Once we have done that, we have seen also that we need also some foundations for decision making. So we propose and structure some roles and responsibilities in the organization with different scenarios, and propose also to organize a risk management based on some gap analysis and gaps that we have identified. So we did this gap analysis based on different regulation, but one of them was, for example, the UI Act. So we deep dive on the data management, for example, requirements in the UI Act for high-risk system potentially. And we identify also which type of controls should be embedded in the AI life cycle. So here we are more on the how, so the bottom of the pyramid in terms of setting up the Responsible AI Foundation. What is interesting in this Responsible AI use cases is you have a different perspective from the previous one. Here we are building the foundations for responsible AI, whatever the AI system might be. And that's also a complementary approach from what we have seen before.
Mm-hmm. And what were the challenges in implementing the AU AI Act while trying to, remain innovative?
This is a challenge today because, first of all, implementing the AI Act involves some kind of compliance cost and complexity if you have some high-risk system, for example. So you need to ensure that you have also proper resources and budget to do so. You have also today a dynamic landscape, as I mentioned. We have the UI Act, but there are also some regulation in China, some recommendation in Singapore. In US, we have the executive order. Not sure it will stay, but at least today it exists. So you have a dynamic landscape and you need to be compliant with one regulation while you have also other regulations. And at the same time here, if we speak about Switzerland specifically, we do not have yet any regulation specific to AI. So if you build up some foundations for responsible AI, you need to build up a framework which is adaptable and flexible for the future. And last but not least, you need also to balance risk and innovation. Because when you are, for example, launching a new initiative on AI, if you have a questionnaire with 80 questions, you will kill the business case with too much controls. So you need also to get some kind of flexibility between the creativity, I would say, and the regulation or the application of the regulation, just to balance the risk and the innovation.
And on the second point you mentioned, so we take aside Switzerland, and it's for the people that are not in Switzerland. But how can companies build you talked about this AI framework. How can companies build a responsible AI framework while navigating those extremely, regulated industries? Some, I guess, already have some guidelines on AI and so forth and so on.
So I would say that it depends on the situation of the company. Here we have a business case which is in financial services. If we are in healthcare or in industry for machine or in transportation, you have also other vertical regulation that may impact AI tomorrow. So the first thing to do is to conduct a gap analysis between the UI Act, but also some vertical regulation that will also be included in the UI Act. You can also leverage some international standards. You have some standards for development, like ISO, for example, on AI risk management. So you can leverage this type of standard for implementation of these responsible AI foundations or setting up some foundations. If you take also these international standards, you will see that you have different common values from this various ethical standard or standardized framework, which rely on specific items, and you can see how these ethical values matches also your own organization. So you have a kind of strategic thinking about how you will develop this responsible AI based on your own business, your organization, and your own culture. And then last but not least, once you have done this, you need, yes, as we did here, to structure a risk management process at corporate level, but also at AI level, which is based on a risk-based approach. As I mentioned before, we will not apply all the same controls for all type of regulations. We will need to adjust from one regulation to the other. For example, for data privacy, we will do data privacy by design. So we will have to adjust also the level of controls according to the risk. So that's basically conduct a gap analysis, ensuring that you have ethical principles in place, having also leveraging also standardized framework, and ensuring that we have this full alignment on risk-based approach, I think are key to build responsible AI foundations.
And maybe just because you talked a lot about regulation part, but how can, or rather not how, but can being, very well regulated and ethical, can it be a differentiator to build long-term client trust?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. If you take, for example, in financial services, the reports between 2023 and 2024, we have seen a triple of ethical principles communication. It means that there is a strong focus, for example, of financial services on building ethical principles today. And these ethical principles are focusing on transparency, fairness, safety, etc. And today we have also some debates on, particularly here in Switzerland, do we need to regulate or to not regulate AI? I think that focusing on ethics is beyond compliance. So if you focus on ethics, it will bring also more loyalty, more trust. And it's not just a compliance effort, it's also an alignment to build a strategic advantage potentially for you in the market, and to show how having ethical principles in place and implementing them in the AI system, because it's not only communication of ethical principle, it's operationalizing them, how it works, and can be a kind of powerful differentiator for you in the market.
Very cool. Very interesting. Thanks a lot for that. I see it's already 4:30, so we have 15 minutes left for our two last case studies, and maybe we can leave room for 7-8 minutes for questions. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Our third case study is a little bit different. So I took the first approach of one extreme where we had an organization that wanted to only buy, so really the bottom of the pyramid, that was a choice, and the vision was really we're going to rely on our partners, right, our vendor partners. In this specific case, it's something a little bit different. It also is happening at the bottom of the pyramid. So we had an organization that was very keen on leveraging AI and implementing it to transform their business model. So that we were talking about the complete opposite as the first one. It's really the most innovative use cases you can think of, right? And they wanted to seriously invest into AI through the support of consultancy organizations just like Visium. And so they even asked us to do a proof of concept in parallel, quite a challenging one, very, very experimental, something very, I would say, high risk, high reward, this kind of moonshot use case that you can do. And that is a testimony of how much they really wanted to leverage AI. But what we quickly realized when we were contracted for this AI strategy was your data maturity is extremely low, and you have very different data silos across your entire organizations. You have tons of data duplicates. I mean, it's a nightmare, let's put it that way. And the other key decision challenge that we see is you have this expectation to do AI across the entire business. But the problem is it could be that we do AI on two data sets that are supposed to be the same, that are different, but that are representing the same thing, because remember, you have silos. So you can't really do that, because you might do a lot of use cases that are actually inefficient, or at least from an organizational or corporate organizational overarching perspective, it wouldn't really drive so much value. And so what we did is we took a step back and we performed a data strategy in order to win with AI in the long run. And so what does it mean, a data strategy? So it was really an in-depth kind of data management pain point analysis. So we looked at how do you actually store data, what is your data storage, what's your data governance, your data security, all your data processes, let's put it that way. How does it actually work? We looked at where you had your data stored, how did you store it, and so forth and so on. And we basically started from scratch, made an entire new recommendation, work on your data, make sure that you actually have your data into something that is more centralized that you can actually leverage, and you create this single source of truth. So in this specific case, we recommended that they actually implement a data lakehouse. So that was back in 2022, right? Q4 2022, more or less, give or take. And so we recommend that they have this data lakehouse, because with the lakehouse, what is beautiful, it's a central repository, which is kind of the combination of a data warehouse and a data lake, if I make it very short. But basically, you can leverage structured and unstructured data at the same time. So you can do any type of use cases that you want once you have it implemented in there. And there is a mechanism in the architecture or the philosophy of the lakehouse, it's called the medallion architecture, where you basically make sure that your data is vetted and you only have one single source of truth, and you don't have any more data silos that can duplicate data and so forth and so on. And that was really the step to be able to, closer than ever, do and leverage artificial intelligence. The only thing that is interesting is that people don't really necessarily see it that way, right? Because it's not AI. When you think about data, sometimes you think it's far away from AI, but it's actually the key requirements. Without data, there's no AI.
So you say data is a key requirement. So I have just a basic question. Can we do AI without having a proper data management system in place?
Well, I think you can, but you will do a lot of single efforts. So to make sure that your data set is good, you will maybe do a lot of cleaning. You will be very tedious. You will have to maybe create yourself and do some sort of patchworks in extracting it from 15 different data sources and so on and so on. So whether you can or not, you can, but it's not scalable. It's not scalable. If you want to have something that you don't need to spend millions maintaining, it's not going to be scalable. It's important to have something that you can actually scale, and that it's easy and not very cost heavy from a maintenance perspective. And so I think that's very important to remind. It's not the sexiest, right, to do this kind of investments and to kind of work, because you don't really see the benefits of the investments. But depending on how you implement it, you actually can implement it through use cases. So you can, instead of saying we're going to do this heavy work 1 year, we're going to do data migrations here and there and implement it, you can instead say, let's identify 10 use cases, and those 10 use cases somehow are going to cover, all of our different data sources. Thanks to the medallion architecture, you ingest all this data one by one, and every single time you manage to get use cases that prove the value of what you're doing, and you can constantly kind of have that. And across those use cases, some might be AI, absolutely, and that will be crucial. I go directly, Christine, to the next one for time reasons, right? So you can tell us more about the Gen AI use case identification and selection.
Yes, so this one is very interesting because it's related to a very small company focused on family office and wealth management. And they were willing to understand the potential of generative AI, even if they do not have a lot of resources to invest, and how generative AI could add value to their business. And they would like also to create the first conditions and commitment to deliver generative AI. So what we did, we educate basically the board and the management about the impact of generative AI. We perform also some ideation workshops to identify in which area, and we are the second level of the pyramid, in which area it could make sense and where we have return on investment. And then we have a challenge is, in financial services, we have all the things related to data privacy, how we manage data privacy with generative AI, which solution should be put in place, etc. So that's an example of a small company willing to leverage new technologies like generative AI and able to do so. I propose maybe to move to the next slide.
Yeah.
because we are a bit short of time otherwise. So here it's basically the methodology that we propose to leverage how we can implement AI from vision to results. So as you may see here, in less than 1 month, basically we go through all the steps. We start with some workshops to ensure that we have AI maturity assessment, ensure that we have also proper alignment between the leadership and management team, and build an AI vision. So it includes also the definition of ethical principles. Once we have done that, we set up and focus on areas where we could implement AI. So we will try to upskill, if needed, the business team, evaluate where AI could provide some business value, potentially reimagine and redesign some business process with AI, and identify potential use cases while evaluating also some risk. And then after this workshop, we have a kind of break, and we come back to another workshop where we will work on the use cases together and build a prioritization exercise to identify also where it makes sense to invest in terms of value and feasibility, which KPIs we could track, which risk assessment is needed depending on the use cases that we have done, and then we build the business case for decision. And once this is done, we will have an approval of the business case, the ethical principles, and where to play. And we will start deep diving on the capabilities. So we will have around 10 days per use cases to identify the different components, being what we just discussed, the data management readiness, the technology that we want to implement, should we use which cloud provider, which AI solution or external AI solution we will develop, or do we develop something specifically, which framework we need depending on the risk and the area of application, and which also operational organizational setup we need to put in place to ensure that we have a proper control. And based on that, we will have an operational roadmap for implementation in just less than 1 month. So you will know what are the requirements and what are the resources, the plan along the different capabilities that are required for the implementation of this use case. That's the holistic approach that we propose, and we leverage it together. Myself providing more the content related to risk management and compliance, and Visium providing also more the technical side, for example, for the use case prioritization or the infrastructure and technologies capabilities for data management. Do you have any questions?
We had some little issues and the chat wasn't enabled. Now it should be all right. So the chat has been enabled, but please feel free to ask questions otherwise on the Q&A. Okay. It doesn't seem there are many questions, but maybe then in the meantime, Christine, going back to the last case study you presented about the GenAI identification, if I recall well, you mentioned it was a family office and wealth manager, right? So
yeah.
So I can imagine it wasn't a very big company. How do you work? How do you evaluate and prioritize use cases for AI when you are such a small company with limited resources for investment? What's your take on that, and what did you do?
So what we do is we had the first meeting with top management, and we discuss what are their strategic objectives in terms of business for them and their strategic imperative. So for them, it was clearly to leverage generative AI for efficiency, and it's how also most of the companies today are leveraging generative AI. So it was, they said we will focus on AI efficiency. And then when we selected the use cases, we said, okay, let's have some use cases on efficiency and some on the customer client perspective, and we will see how we can implement them. And it's more in terms of feasibility that we have seen that it was easier for them to implement, for example, on back office process, generative AI, to prepare, for example, some report or prepare some research before a meeting with the customer, but not on the front office. So we have a list of use cases, and during this workshop, we made a kind of scoring of each use cases based on the efficiency and return on investment that we expect on that. And based on that, anyway, the cost of infrastructure for them was to go on the cloud and also to leverage some solutions from the market. So it was co-pilot. So we then build up a prototype, just to confirm this.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for that. I see we have there are a couple of questions that popped up. Maybe we can take them one by one. There's one from Domenico, which is, do you see clients are confused with so many providers, competing offers? Do you think defining a strategy and governance structure first is the best way to help navigate the landscape? Maybe I can help you on this one, and I can take this one quickly before moving to the second question. There is definitely tons of providers that are offering competing offers. That's absolutely true. You're fully right. And there is a lot of confusion. We also see it with our clients. I think that what you need first internally, if you can, is really define what do you want to achieve with AI. This AI vision, if you can do this exercise on your own, or you can bring somebody, right? And then you will tell me, yes, but who do I bring? There's so many people out there. I think there are some resources where you can also, well, first, I mean, you can bring Christine and myself. That's the best. But there are, this type of work is the first element of the pyramid. And once you have your AI vision, you will know exactly what do we want to achieve with AI. And then from there, I think you will be able to talk to different providers to see how exactly they match that vision. Have they already done this kind of exercise with other companies? What are the case studies? And check their references and see how it actually works. I think trying yourself to define the strategy and the governance structure and so forth and so on, it's a complicated step. It will be a lot of investment. And if AI is something new for your organization, you might do a lot of investments of time and resources internally that might not actually be so fruitful. So try to onboard somebody there, but build your AI vision on your own. And then, Christina, there's a question for you from Hannah that says, aside from establishing AI principles, where does the organization start to build an AI governance framework from the ground up?
I would say it depends on the area and the sector in which you are operating and where AI also is implemented. So I will start also not crafting a new framework completely from scratch. I will evaluate what you have already in place. For example, there are a lot of data privacy rules in place today and potentially some controls, so you can leverage some of them. And evaluate where the gaps are. So you need to have a kind of pragmatic approach to implement and to start your governance framework, and also ensure that, for example, in terms of organization or committee, if we speak, for example, in financial services, we have tons of committees for credit market, etc. Is it worthwhile to create a new committee to manage AI? Not sure. It depends on the situation. So once again, it's pragmatism, and ensure also that you take into consideration the context of use of AI and the risks which are embedded, and the regulation also around this industry, because it depends in which industry you are.
Thanks, Christine. I think we have we're gonna go a little bit over time, but we have three questions. So there's one question from Bora that asks about the fact that the title was AI strategy, but we've talked a lot about use cases. And I think also in our presentation, it was a lot about different use cases, compliance, and then technology as a whole. And he would like to know how we can elaborate on how the land makes and a holistic strategy from your point of view. And I think here I have some food for thoughts for you, Bora, on that one. I think you have different ways of approaching an AI strategy, right? You can do a fully fledged 100 slides PowerPoint, and you really focus on having all the different pillars, having all the different use cases, and so forth and so on, and that you do. What we're trying to provide with this approach is something a little bit more lean, a little bit more agile, which is you have this pyramid and you go step by step. So you start with your vision, then you start with your where to play. Your where to play is where you're going to have all the necessary frameworks to decide on what use case you want to do. And then per use case, you have the different elements to allow you on how to choose a certain use case and how to deal with a certain use case. So you will have all the processes and the framework right there. With the rapid evolution of technology and AI, a use case that you are trying to prioritize 6 months ago might be completely useless today. And that's just the reality. So what we are trying to push with Christine is more, you have to build your frameworks and you can leverage the kind of frameworks that Visium and SafeAI now bring. And then you go more work on a use case per use case basis because that's really what a pragmatic approach allows. I'll give you a quick example. Pre-LLM ChatGPT, when you were trying to do some NLP, let's say, documents or so on and so on, you could have spent millions on this kind of project. After that, it goes very quickly. You have to be very lean and agile to adapt to that. And maybe we can go to the next question, which is from Anouk, which is similar to what I was touching upon, but more on a regulation perspective. So that's for you, Christine, which is given the rapid evolution of AI regulations, what processes should be implemented to ensure ongoing adaptability and compliance?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's the reason why I said that you need to assess which type of regulation that you have today in different geographies, for example, which type of standards applies to your industry. And at the same time, when you are building something, you need to build something which is agile for the future. So it's more the process and also the acculturation and upskill of all the teams, and not only the AI teams, also the non-technical teams, and ensure that you have developed a cross-functional team with legal, ethical guys, for example, risk managers, AI, data scientists, working together and ensuring that you are tracking proper risk, depending not only on new regulation coming in, but also potentially on new technology coming in, because we have seen with the recent development on generative AI how this technology moves fast also. So it's the only way that we can ensure also and consistently monitor the change. And on top of that, you can add also some kind of technologies to ensure that you are compliant with new regulation coming in, and you are tracking also all the controls and KPIs that are required by this regulation in a faster and more efficient way than, I would say, in a use case by use case, but with standardized solutions for AI control and compliance.
Thanks, Christine. And the last question that we have is, there is a lot of uncertainties surrounding an AI project strategy that are unique to AI. One of them could be how fast are things changing? How would you deal with this uncertainty, constant change, especially when it involves multiple teams, vendors, externals? That's a wonderful question. I suggest I give a first take and then Christine, you complement. That's what I was mentioning a little bit before when trying to answer Bora. You need to be flexible from the get-go with AI. You can't think that your AI strategy and roadmap you do for the next 5 years is going to hold true, because it doesn't work that way. And because we've seen in the last 6 months so many different opportunities that are creating that whatever fully fledged strategy we could do 6 months ago might not hold today, and we would take a very different ways of attempting it. I'll give you a single example, but beginning 2022, when we were doing these kind of strategies, we may have not seen, or let's say LLMs were not as democratized thanks to what OpenAI brought to the table than they are today. And so many use cases that we thought were impossible today are possible at a low cost. That's what I mean by possible. Today, for example, there is a lot of talks on the topic of agentic AI. When if you were to build a strategy today, you would need to consider agentic AI within your roadmap and how do you actually do it. And so what's most important is the frameworks you set in place to take your decisions. Your decision making is very important on what you will do and how you will do it. And if you have the right frameworks in place, and here I guess it will be also true for compliance, ethics, and so forth and so on. Of course, you have to evolve over time, but you will be able to navigate these trends and these changes. I don't know, Christine, if you have something to add on that.
I will just add one sentence is I think you need also to ensure that you have built up your own ecosystem, and your ecosystem on AI is not only internally but also external, with potential consultation with regulators, the industry, and also potential customers using your AI solution to ensure that you have a proper ecosystem on top of the technologies providers that fully align, and that you are able also to be aware about the changes and how to implement them most faster based on your ecosystem.
And last question. As a company with almost 1,000 employees, it's tempting to take the plunge into Microsoft's OpenAI integration because, of course, we already have the platform in-house. This is to create an appetite for a few simpler use cases. What speaks against it apart from the vendor lock-in? That's a very interesting question. If you send me an email, I'd be happy to deep dive into more into that. But basically, it depends on your use cases. So when we talk about OpenAI, we talk about mainly ChatGPT, different type of use cases, right? You actually have tons of different providers that I would tell you, provide you a ChatGPT-like kind of version. So I mentioned before the Mistral, the Gemini, but there are many more. You have Meta that is offering that, and so forth and so on. And so I don't know what language you are working on, what geographical region, what you are trying to do, but depending on that, you might have actually performance that might be much better. And aside from performance, you also have the biggest, and I would say even most important element to think of is cost sometimes. If you have one license or two license, nobody really cares about $20 a month. But depending on what you are trying to set for your organization, if you want to scale it to your 1,000 employees, your bill is going to become humongous. And so that's where also exploring different options might be very interesting. So really performance and the cost, that might be very relevant. I don't know, Christine, on your side, if you have something to add on that one.
I think I would fully agree with you. It's key to think about the use cases that you want to implement. As a starting point, I think it's a good starting point to start with one key provider. But then when you are evolving with larger use cases or larger scale of use cases, the question comes on how you will implement also and scale all these use cases, and do you need which type of infrastructure do you need on top of generative AI. Maybe you will have, if you want to get more agents, for example, specific setup, technological setup. So it depends on the complexity also of the use cases and how and the range of use cases that you will implement.
Very good. I think we can close it here. Thanks a lot, Christine. For all of you attending, you can send us an email to either Christine or myself if you're interested in continuing a conversation, or you have a question that you didn't have time to ask or that might pop up tonight before going to bed. So here are our contact details. Feel free to screenshot it. Feel free to email Christine or myself or both. We would be very happy to take any follow-up calls. And if you're looking to be better at, let's say, be better, more compliant about your AI future, you can reach out to us.
Thanks a lot for this invitation, Luc, and happy to get any follow-up question with you. Have a nice evening. Thanks for joining.
Have a nice evening, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.